Good evening, students. In the previous class, we have discussed the appointment of directors, remunerations of directors, and what are the legal procedures and provisions regarding key managerial persons. And today, in this particular class, we will discuss about corporate governance. What is corporate governance and what are the needs of corporate governance and what are the legal provisions in Companies Act regarding the corporate governance will be discussed in this particular class. So governance has become one of the legal hot issues after 80s because a lot of business scam happens after 80s. You would have heard of American company called Enron. It has become insolvent because of scam and a lot of other irregularities happens in that particular company. Then in India, there is a classical example for this particular thing is Satyam Company Limited, Satyam Computers. You would have heard of the name Ramalinga Raju. He was one of the most successful businessmen, but now he is in jail because the reason is because of the transparency and the lack of corporate governance, and the company is totally failed because of irregularities in the finance. So in this background, we need to understand what is corporate governance. So what is corporate governance? It refers to a set of systems, principles, and process by which a company is governed. It's a system, principles and process by which a company is governed. ഒരു സ്ഥാപനം ഭരിക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടിയുള്ള ഒരു പ്രോസസ്, സിസ്റ്റം, അതേപോലെ ചില ബേസിക് പ്രിൻസിപ്പിൾസ്, ഇതിനെയാണ് മൊത്തത്തിൽ നമ്മൾ ഇതിന് പറയുക പുട്ട് ടുഗെദർ ക്യാൻ ബി കോൾഡ് കോർപ്പറേറ്റ് ഗവേണൻസ്. It gives some guidelines. Corporate governance gives some guidelines on how a company should be managed, governed through transparency, through through values, ethical values, etc., etc. So some of the aspects of corporate governance are like accountability, corporate transparency, etc. So that must be followed. These kind of guidelines must be followed by a company while governing is called corporate governance. So there is a definitions given by Companies Act. Corporate governance may be defined as a set of system, process and principles which ensure that company is governed in the best interest of the stakeholders. So ultimately the stakeholders' interest must be protected. But the question is, who are the managers and who are the owners? Owners and managers are different. So it doesn't mean that managers can do anything or everything as they wish. So as a manager, it is their duty to ensure transparency, ensure accountability to the shareholders' interest. So shareholders are looking for profit ultimately, they are looking for their own interest. So the managers, if they look for their own interest, there will be contradictions. So to avoid such circumstances, the corporate governance principles must be followed and ethical values must be followed by the board of directors and all other key managerial persons. Such ethical values are called corporate governance as per Companies Act. Then what are the objectives of these particular things? One is to optimum utilizations of the resources for enhancing the corporate values. Say the given resources must be utilized to ensure the corporate values. And number two is ethical behavior inside the organization. Say there may be harassment inside the organization, there may be lack of financial fraud inside the organization. To avoid such circumstances, there must be a transparent and value oriented governing aspect, principles. That is why we need an corporate governance. Why then needs and importance of corporate governance? As you know, the changing ownership structures, the company may change, owners may change, but the company have a perpetual successions. It will not die. So company should not die, but owners may change every second by second because the shareholders may change. Shareholders may be sold and bought in the stock market every now and then. Second by second it is bought and sold. So the owners will change. but the company should exist as it is and should run their business. So for that there must be some people who are value oriented, ethical oriented. And growing number of scam, as I said, Satyam is an example, Enron, an American electrical company, is an example. Like so many international companies, during 2008, so many companies closed down because of the international global meltdown. But the behind was some of the international banks was closed, like so many banks were closed down because of financial fraud. So financial fraud is one of the major scam happens in companies. So Satyam was one of the example. So the growing number of scams in and around the world has forced the government to make some guidelines regarding corporate governance. Then ownership from management, as I said, separation of ownership from management. Management is separate, and even shareholders are different. Shareholders are the owners and managers are the managers. So there it is the duty of the managers to protect the interest of the shareholders. Then it is a social responsibility, because they are using the social resources. The companies are using the social resources. So as they are using social resources, they have to look for profit, and they have to increase the value of the shareholders. But instead, if they misuse the share resources, it involves the cost to the society in terms of closures of business, in terms of loss of jobs, in terms of decreasing value of products and qualities, etc. Then globalization, as you know, this is the era of globalization. In this COVID pandemic time, all the businesses are connected internationally. Say we are purchasing products from Amazon. Amazon is an American company. Alibaba is a Chinese company. We are using the products of a Chinese mobile set or international product. So this created a pressure from all the multinational companies to follow a same guideline that is acceptable internationally in terms of corporate governance. Then mergers and acquisitions. A lot of companies are going for mergers and acquisitions. Say one company take over another company. There may be hostile takeovers. Hostile takeover from one company may take over another company. So that create problems. So there are a lot of acquisitions, acquiring mergers happens internationally. So because of that, why one company acquire another company? It may be to strengthen the financial positions, or it may be some other reasons, but it should be to strengthen the value or increase the value of the firm, and not to have a hostile takeover of another company. Then there are certain SEBI rules and guidelines to be followed. Corporate, it is mandatory that Security Exchange Board of India has created certain guidelines, and that must be followed by each companies and corporate. Then one of the important topic we have to discuss is the principles of corporate governance. First thing is fairness. Fairness means corporate governance should protect the shareholders' right and ensure the equitable treatment of all the shareholders. All shareholders should be treated equally. Maybe small investors, or maybe large investors, or even including minority interest of shareholders and foreign shareholders. Everybody should be treated equally. That's called fairness. Then responsibility. It means discharging its functions, including compliance with the regulations and code of conduct. Discharge the duty of every stakeholders. Say the key managerial person has to discharge their responsibility with regulations and code of conduct. And then transparency in all the transactions, and disclose all material fact and regarding the companies, including financial situations, performance, ownership, and governance structures. So that is called a transparency. Transparency in the financial transaction. That's what happens to the Satyam Limited. Satyam Company Limited, financial irregularity, and it was, the auditor was PricewaterhouseCoopers, that was international firm. Even then, they didn't disclose. That particular company also have a role in this particular scam, because they didn't disclose all the material fact. They hide all those fact. So transparency in the financial transaction, then accountability involves strategic guideline for the company, the effective monitoring of management by the board of directors. That is accountability for governing the aspect, and effective monitoring aspects, etc., are called accountabilities. Then what are the benefit of corporate governance? Say, as we said, it will increase the value of the firm, it will increase the shareholders value, it will increase provide proper inducement to the owners as well as the managers to achieve the objectives and interest of the shareholders and organization, lower the capital cost and ensure the corporate success and economic growth, and will minimize the waste, corruption, that is one of the big issue, risk and mismanagement, which result in a positive impact of the share prices. And good corporate governance create investors confidence, as a result of which companies rise capital identify, and so the company's capital structure can be strengthened, company's profit can be strengthened, company's values can be strengthened, and goodwill also can be strengthened. So that definitely will boost the share interest of the investors, and that will be definitely reflected in the stock market. Then committees, there are one committee appointed by SEBI in 2005 regarding this corporate governance, and that is Naresh Chandra and Narayan Murthy committee. Narayan Murthy is very famous, he was founder of Infosys, and they have given certain recommendations under clause 49 of the listing agreement of Indian Stock Exchange. These particular provisions are given. So what are the major provisions regarding these particular things? First thing is, the board will lay down code of conduct for all the board members and senior management of the company in compulsorily follows. And code of conduct, how to behave, how to operate, standard of operating procedures, and the behavioral aspects must be conducted. And CEO and CFO will certify that the financial statement and the cash flow statement of the company should be certified by the CEO and CFOs, and follow the treatment it is efficient for all the financial material facts in the financial transaction must be disclosed, and the company will have to lay down procedure for informing the board members about the risk management and minimization procedures. And the money raised through public issue, the company will have to disclose the use of an application of fund. Sources of fund and application of funds must be disclosed. When a public issue happens, IPO happens, the share issue happens, this use of this particular money, say when fund is raised from the public, the use of this particular capital must be ഡിസ്ക്ലോസ്ഡ് ഇൻ ദ ഫിനാൻഷ്യൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെൻറ്റ്. നമ്മൾ എവിടെയൊക്കെയാണ് ഈ ഫണ്ട് യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഒരു ഷെയർ മാർക്കറ്റിൽ നിന്ന് റേസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഷെയർ ഇഷ്യൂ ചെയ്ത് ഫണ്ട് റേസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അത് എവിടെയൊക്കെ യൂസ് ചെയ്യും, എന്തിനൊക്കെ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള ഒരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെൻറ്റ് മസ്റ്റ് ബി ഡിസ്ക്ലോസ്ഡ് ബൈ the company. So these are some of the major recommendations of Narayan Murthy committees on corporate governance, and they have put their report in 2005. So next is corporate social responsibility, that we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.